Welcome to our last module. It is a big module. There's quite a lot of work in it. I couldn't help myself. I kept going down rabbit holes, and I hope it works. I think it works really well. I think it's fabulous. But I went down lots of rabbit holes, and I then had to pull it back and bring it all into line, very much like all the intricacies of everything we've been learning with the body and the mind and etc. It's like there's so much, and you want your points of reference, and then hold it all. This is another huge aspect point of reference, and you kind of have to go down some rabbit holes to hold it all. And so I hope I've done that well for you. I think I have. You can let me know. But it's the enteric nervous system. It's looking at the gut. It's looking at how important it is. It's looking at not just that it's the second brain, which I just find inane, although it's one way that we get to say it. But it's so informed by so many things, and then it informs us. And when it's out of play, it disrupts everything. It disrupts every aspect of our ability to be ourselves and to connect with our world. So it's a very, very important module. I really do go down some wonderful rabbit holes, because we're looking at cranial nerves and extracranial nerves. We're looking at the Tien and the heart chakras without trying to be too weird and wobbly about it. We have something very interesting called the mesentery, which I hope fascinates you because it did me. And then we're looking at ancient sea sponges. We're then looking at all of that, weird aspects of our body and our lineage, and then what it's like to be in a body given your orientation is maybe one way or another. And if you have a certain orientation, perhaps along a more dorsal vagus line, for example, which I like to talk about a lot in terms of people on the spectrum, what that means for us, and what expression that has in terms of how you know yourself in the world versus other ways. And there's no right or wrong way, but it's I'm just trying to dive a little bit deeper, and that sea metaphor is very apt for what we're looking at here. I'm trying to dive a little deeper so you can get a feel for what a lot of people, can't speak for them all, on the spectrum actually feel like, and why they might be like that from a physiological point of view. So I've done a lot there, and I'm looking at how we understand information, how we understand scientific information, and where it's valid and where it isn't valid, and is your own experience valid? Is science corroborating your experience, or the other way around? And it can be both, but for me, everything I've shown you for all of these modules, I already knew. I didn't know. I went and found things to explain what I inherently know. So a lot of my understanding is because I know things. My body knows things. I've been in a body for nearly 52 years. It knows stuff, but I knew it a really long time ago. I have an awareness. And then we then find the science to prove that, or we go investigate and prove it with science. We've got to the point where now we think the science tells us what's real. But there is another kind of knowledge that precedes science, where science is only a small part of it, because living in a body and having an embodied experience and the dimensions of that, internal and external, and higher order and all sorts of things mean that there's levels of awareness that science can only begin to grasp. And as you'll see, in this module, there's parts of our body, I mean, we even know from the fascia, that science has taken absolutely no interest in, so it's not real. We have a 13th cranial nerve that never gets talked about, and it's not real, but it is. So there's this interesting fluidity and lack of precise lines that A needs looking at and B just needs really appreciating. There is nothing precise in this world. We love to make things precise. People argue about precision. People will argue about it in terms of autism therapy or research, but there is no precision because everything impacts everything else. So we can't know definitively, following this train of thought, whether this work is exactly what's happening, because there are so many variables at play. We're swimming with people and we're working with them. Their parents' influence, their self-awareness influences, their school environment influences, their body influences, other therapies they're having at the same time influence. And so we can only ever take inferences, even if we do really, really robust studies. You still have all of these variables that you can't account for, because we're all part of this flow. There is just, it is the flow of life. And so I'm being very convoluted, and this is the thing with this module, it gets very swimmy. I'm asking you to kind of go swim in this thing. It's not as concrete as some parts have been, but when I've broken it down into all the concrete parts of different aspects, like the mesentery, which is just very exciting, there's parts of our body that are there that we've never understood, and so we don't think it's relevant. But when you take it under the umbrella of this A.R.T, morphing kind of understanding, you can see why that thing might be really valuable. When you look at the 13th cranial nerve, you can see why it might be really valuable, and how, when we look from this way, just how fascinating it all is. But if you put that lovely swimming pool to one side and look at it from a scientific critical eye, it gets narrower and narrower and narrower until you'd have to be explaining yourself and you'd lose it, because it requires a creative fluidity in order to hold all of this stuff. So science is starting to pick it up and be able to hold it, but it's got so much against it in terms of, thousands of years of us needing to be better than the body, needing to be superior, needing the mind to be the best thing, that it's science's capacity to hold all of this stuff is very, very limited. Science is like a person in a highly sympathetic state who can't take one more thing in, and then they think from there. There's not a lot of connection to the body with science. There's not a lot of appreciation of the wideness and the vastness of things, because it doesn't know how to measure it, and it doesn't think it's true. So with this module, just go swimming in it, see where it suits you, see what it illuminates for you, keep an open mind, and be very aware that your scientific investigation is very appropriate. Your scientific discrimination is very appropriate. But good science also assesses itself. And the question is, what happens to all those parts of the body that science doesn't make sense of? If they're dismissed, are they still relevant? Do they still have influence? Are they still hugely vital, even if science doesn't think so?
This is an invitation to the Certificate 1 A.R.T course for the therapist training. It's a unique course. It will allow you to infuse all of your work with something quite unique. Something that I think is missing with a lot of therapies is what this work provides. What it does in many ways is teach foundational skills that people are often missing when they're in a trauma state, or when they have autism or ADHD or some other such things that often shut the body down or leave it in a hypervigilant state. A lot of things are then inaccessible, like what am I feeling? What's my leg feel like? There's a way in which finding the body and accessing it's very difficult. So this work really teaches you how to understand what's going on in the body at a theory level. And we go through a whole lot of theory, including the polyvagal theory, but a whole lot of other stuff. And you can see the list on the website for sort of kind of the weird deep dives that I like to do to try and explain what this work is for me. But also what I'm trying to do the whole time is actually infuse you with an understanding of how to work gently with the body. Someone recently called me a nervous system whisperer, and I thought that was really sweet, because it is a bit like that. I sort of talk about working with the octopus, which is your nervous system, and the sentience of it and the intelligence of it, and not bossing it around and not taking it to places it doesn't want to go, but actually harmonizing with it, building relationship, and then seeing what we can have when it lets go, when it stops hijacking the system. It's a very, very different and interesting way to work, but you have people with a whole range of issues that are hard to get at. This work works there. So it very much can infuse your current practice with this just 1 year as a standalone. And then for other people, what you may find is that you really want to go on and be a fully accredited ART therapist, which is an amazing thing in itself.